G'day runners, welcome to Running Alive. You've heard about the 10% rule to increase your training. Let's look beyond that and work out how we really increase our training. Right, tempo run again. Original plan was to extend this out to 7k, but I'm sticking at the 6 kilometers. We'll go into the details why, but now it's time to start. First up, let's look at the 10% rule. What is it really? It's a pretty simple concept. It's the maximum amount of volume you can increase your training by each week. So each week you can only add 10% of what you've done the previous week to your training volume. Let's put some numbers to it. Let's say you ran 10 kilometers in the week. 10% of 10 is 1. So on your next week, you can increase your training by 1 kilometer only. It takes you up to a total volume of 11 kilometers. Or let's look at it this way. If you're running 30 kilometers, 10% is 3. So you can up your training to 33 kilometers. Then the following week, another 10%, so that's 3.3. It'll take you up to 36.3. There's one important question on this 10% rule. Does it work? Does it prevent injury? Does it lead to better performance? And the short answer is, yeah, sometimes it works, but it may not be the best approach. Now, why won't it be the best approach? Well, first up, pause this video, have a think about it. I'd love to see what you come up with and what your answers are. Pop them down in the comments, and in a little bit I'll give you my take on it. And why doesn't the 10% rule always apply? Well, for one, not all kilometres are created equal. But should we be using this 10% rule? Well, for some it's quite appropriate. By using it to set a maximum limit on how much we're going to increase our training, it's not a bad way to enforce a limit to stop us from just doing too much before our bodies are ready for it. We want to be more exact than that. You're smarter than that. Let's look at other ways we can judge the load and how we increase our training. I'll take it back to that tempo run that I mentioned at the start of the video. The original plan was to extend this out to 7k, but I'm sticking at the 6 kilometers. 2 weeks already of 6 kilometer runs. But I've found that my recovery from this 6 kilometer tempo run hasn't been that great over the last couple of weeks. And especially if I add a little bit of hill work in there, well, my Achilles seems to stiffen up and start at the early stages of when I was having problems a few months ago. And this comes back to not all kilometres are worth the same. So it's probably easier to add on distance on your medium runs, your long runs, because they're lower intensity The overall impact of this session usually isn't as high, but to add the distance on for a higher intensity run, whether it's intervals, threshold work, tempo, or something else, well, it has more impact. For the original 6 kilometre tempo, I ran that session at an average pace of 4:58 per K, and I averaged a heart rate of 149 beats over the whole session. Now, following up, a bit over a week later, I did another 6 kilometre session, but this time, instead of being flat like the first, this one had a lot more hill work. The heart rate average was down a little bit at 147, so only 2 beats below, and the pace 5 minutes per K, so 2 seconds slower, which, if to be honest, with the terrain, is definitely faster. This week, instead of extending it out to 7 kilometres, I picked a course where I kept it at 6 kilometres and had a few undulations, not as hilly as the previous week, and definitely a few more hills than compared to the original flat course. So somewhere in between. This time round, the heart rate average was 147 beats per minute, which was exactly the same as the hilly course, but the speed was 4:43 per kilometre. So if we compare that to the 4:58, well, that's 15 seconds per kilometre faster. All at the same effort level. I've kept the distance the same, but the speed is faster, so that is actually a higher load on the body. So we look at how the body pulls up over the next couple of days. And at the moment, my goal is that I should be able to do another moderate to hard session after 1 or 2 easier days. That guide of being able to do the moderate or hard session again in 1 or 2 days, while handy, isn't always the only guide to use, and there's definitely some cases where just because you can doesn't mean you should. The Achilles I mentioned earlier, well, it was flaring up a little bit, so I think the tempo run may have had a little bit to do with it, and then the 9-minute run the following day, which, despite being easy, I think just didn't give my tendons the chance to catch up and adapt as they should. And well, that brings me on to one guide that I like to keep on top of, my Tendon Health. That guide for the tendons is a simple pain scale. So problem with tendons is they usually have a delay, or they don't show up the issue straight away. So a good guide is to check how they are 24 hours afterwards. The pain scale is simple out of 10. 0 being nothing at all, 10 being the worst pain you could have at all. Now, tendons, to improve them, you usually get a bit of pain, particularly if you're coming off any injury. So I like to think that a score of 1 or 2 out of 10 shows us that the tendon is able to handle the load that you gave it the day before. When you start getting up to 3 and 4, it's borderline on the tendon being able to handle it, and anything above is you're starting to overshoot the mark. So what happened this week was I felt fine after the tempo run, felt great during it, a little bit of stiffness afterwards, but nothing that I thought about. Next day I was at about a 3 out of 10 for the pain, and there was a bit of stiffness. Went out on that 90-minute easy run thinking that would be absolutely fine, but next day I'd give it a 5 or a 6 out of 10. Definitely done way too much. So originally what was planned was an interval session, but that just wasn't going to go down well. So I took the day off, kept it easy, and scrapped the intervals, and they've well, not quite there yet, but I started with a 2 out of 10 pain this morning. So if we're looking at that, that's 2 days later. So last thing I want to do is set myself back again and have to take some extended time out of training. So I decided to keep things relatively comfortable today, and ran out and did a math test. And that brings us to the next point. That point is, there are more ways to improve your running than just increasing the distance. If I look at my own training, 70k a week seems to be the limit that my body can handle at the moment. Do you really need to add to your training when you are improving? So at the moment, I'm getting faster in my tempo runs. Same effort level and the speed's getting faster. For my math tests, I'm 4 seconds faster than the previous test a few weeks ago. My interval training, I'm holding the similar paces, it's feeling easier to run, and I'm recovering better from those sessions. I'm still improving, so stick with the improvement. It might not be as quick as I want. So if you want to increase your training, be careful with it. Avoid really big jumps. Pay attention to your chronic load. That is, look at the average of what you've been doing over the last 4 to 6 weeks. That tells you where you're at. If you can handle that, then you can increase. But if you're just increasing every single week for the sake of, I think I have to up everything just to improve, well, you might be mistaken and you might be setting yourself up for a good risk. Do what it takes to stay consistent. Have the patience to keep doing it, and you'll be surprised at the progress you make. Keep on running.